Oh, okay. So I think we are good to go. Um, so welcome anyhow, whoever is here for the live and the recording afterwards. And apologies again that I couldn't make it on Thursday evening. Out of my control. I didn't leave enough time for traveling, and that was my own fault. But we're here now anyhow, and hopefully we can talk about all things plantain. Before we start, I just wanted to draw a card from this lovely deck I have. It's the Herbal Astrology Oracle cards, if anyone's interested. I like to draw a card. I think winter time it brings me back into doing all these rituals. During the summer, I find I go off all about myself and then I come back in winter. So let's see what card it has for us this time. So we have cordyceps, which is a mushroom, and it's called Revitalize. So anyway, if anyone wanted to check out those cards, they're a beautiful card. Love them. Anyway, let's get started. So plantain. So it's one of like these really common herbs. And I don't know, Mary, if you've used it, seen it before, you can just give thumbs up, thumbs down. You don't have to, because you're on mute. So don't worry if you don't want to unmute yourself. But it's kind of one of those common ones. You gonna say something? No. Um, you're on mute, so we can't hear you, just in case you were. We'll let you figure that out. In the meantime, what I think I'll start by doing is just sharing my screen and showing a picture of plantain. Because it's so common, a lot of people just kind of walk over it, which is normally what happens when it comes to plantain. Unless it's left to grow wild in an area, it will go up quite tall. If not, it tends to stay nice and tight to the ground. And I know it's in most gardens and nearly everywhere. Like I can probably bet my house on it that it's near enough to you. You won't have to go too far to find it, which is the great thing about this plant. So let me just share the screen here. And hopefully you can see this. And I'll just present that there now. So you can see this, Mary? Yeah. Yeah, that's grand. So this is just a little bit, and it's just a slide off one of my other classes that I teach. And this is just talking about the crushed leaf. And that's when I talk about it fresh, but I really just wanted to show the pictures. So there's a couple of types. There's actually over 200 species that grow around the world. Here in Ireland, we kind of have main two types that we use, and this is the broadleaf one. So you can see here it goes broad. It kind of goes out. It's fat basically in the middle. And it has these long kind of stems that come out of it. Then we have this is another picture of the broadleaf. So it grows quite wide, and if it's left alone, it will grow up quite high as well. And I don't know why it keeps doing that there. And this is the Lanceo one that we call. It's a lot more common, I find. It's tall and thin and grows really high if left alone. And this is it here again. I just wanted to show these pictures, and it's called a ribwort as well because of the ribs in it. It's quite fibrous, so it's not one that we would use kind of in food a lot because it's fibrous. But it is one that I like to use fresh if I can, as in if for, which we'll talk about in a while, stings and bees and just chewing it up and eating it like that, it can be great. But the great thing about this is it's so widely available, like it's absolutely everywhere, which is great. And this I just wanted to share because I was in the National Museum of Ireland there about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And my husband was like waving over the other side and calling me across. And I was just like, what does he have to find now? And he's big into history and he's a history buff and the whole lot. So I thought it was going to be something boring, but it actually turned out it was a slate. I don't know if you can see this, from a 15th century church in Louth. And what it is it's a slate that has a medicinal cure on it. And so I went off researching it, and one of the things it has on it is plantain, and it says here, I don't know if you can even read this, but it says this one has a recipe for containing the wheat, plantain, and egg yolk. And I just thought, and my husband was like, "Oh, isn't your plant this month on plantain?" So I was just like, "Absolutely, it is." So this is in the National Museum. I'm going to stop sharing, just in case anyone else is trying to get in and I can see. But I went off and researched that slate because I was like, "Oh my God, that's so interesting." That back in the 15th century, like they were talking about this. And I found out what other ingredients were written on that slate, and it's written in what was it called? Irish English. Oh God, they had a name on it anyway. But it was translated, and I had plantain, meadowsweet, leaves of silverweed, all plants that I currently use as well. Butter, some mallow hocks, which is common marshmallow or common mallow, which is like the beautiful purple flower. Again, it's grown out here. I use that as well. Ground seal, swine's lard, so pig lard, wall pennywort, which is still available to this day, obviously, egg yolk and chickweed. And then it was mixed in with wheat meal and 2 stems of red rotten dwarf elder. And I just thought, oh my God, how fascinating is that? Like 15th century, and I'm still using pretty much, other than the swine grease and lard, the pig grease, I'm using pretty much everything else that's there. And the fact that they were using it, and that piece of slate has lasted this long and is now in the National Museum, I just thought pretty cool. Sometimes it's just you learn to love your job more than ever, and the fact that it's just been around for this long, and that plantain was still being used. And they went on to describe on the slates how it was used as a poultice. So that's how they were using it, as a poultice. All those ingredients mixed together, placed on the skin, and used, I would imagine, as a healing and drawing agent. Obviously we have to kind of decide whether it was going to, we don't know for sure, but it was definitely worth etching into slate and keeping sacred, so it was obviously highly prized. But yeah, so the plant obviously of this, well, I was going to say this month, but we're now on the 1st of December, last month, but we'll still talk about it, was plantain. And so I know some people on this call don't get the box, some do, and that's fine. But it was just, it's an interesting one because it is such a common weed, that, like I said, it gets overlooked a lot, which I kind of think is such a shame, because it is in such abundance and it is free to pick if you know what you're picking. And so yeah, so what, I don't know if anyone has, sorry, now I have some plantain oil down here and I nearly knocked it over, but thankfully the lid is on it to talk about. And now it's a bit leaky. So the parts we use are the leaves and the seeds. Mainly, we don't bother with the roots, and I mainly only use the leaves. It can be notoriously hard to dry out unless you have a dehydrator, or unfortunately here in Ireland we're kind of stuck with the weather-wise. It would have been damp, and it is quite a mucilagin herb, so it takes a while for it to dry out in the right conditions. So people tend to pick it and dry it, and it goes black, and they tend to throw it out. So it can be a bit of a hard one to dry in our weather, especially this time of year, but it can certainly be used fresh. We can use it even now. We could go out and pick some and use it in a tea, or as a poultice, as a homemade poultice. And the best way to do that is, if anyone's ever been to any of my classes or my walks or whatever, this is where I horrify people and pick a bit of plantain, start chewing on it and rubbing it on. But if you break it up, if you pick a stem of it, roll it up and then chew down on it, it just releases all the saponins and all the mucilagin in it, and then you can rub it onto any stings or bites. Or it's one of its common name in America is actually snakebite plant, because it would be used for snake bites. Obviously we don't have snakes, thankfully, well, ones that are roaming too wild around, so we don't have to call it that. But it's definitely my one that I would go to for any sort of, I would kind of overlook dock leaf and go for plantain with when it's to do with stings. I know the old tradition in Ireland here is to go for a dock leaf, but I would go straight for plantain. A, you're going to find plantain a little bit quicker, and B, it works quicker than dock leaf. Dock leaf, you have to break it down a lot further. It's a lot more waxy and hard, and with plantain, with a couple of chews on it, it breaks down and you can just rub it on the sting, and it's going to really help bring that down. It's antimicrobial, so really good. Again, if we're using it on cuts and wounds, it's going to be really good for that. Yeah, good for that. Let me see all notes here from the book. Yeah, the main system it helps with that we'll talk about tonight is like your digestion, your respiratory, your immune, urinary, and externally. This is one I definitely like. You can't go wrong with having it in your house, in your first aid kit. Like, it's definitely one I would have on hand. And the best way I probably have it on hand is in a balm form, which I have some here, and I sent some out in the boxes. And oil. I think I sent oil and balm. This won't open for me now. But I have Balms everywhere. It's a running joke in my family with like there's a plantain balm in my handbag, in my husband's car, in my car, in my dad's car, in my mom, in my sister's. Everyone, my niece just got a new car. I threw a jar of it in her glove compartment. It's just one of those ones that's just so handy to have around as an all-rounder. Like you can use it as a lip balm, you can use it if you get cuts, bruises, scrapes, bites. Hay fever, really good for hay fever because what it's doing is in a balm using it, it's pulling out any pollen that's getting in and blocking it and in around the eyes. So really good for that as well. But it's just one of those ones because it's what it does, it's a drawing agent. It pulls things out, not extremely if we're just using it once or twice, but it pulls out dirt. So you get that graze cut, and you slide across the floor, especially kids, and they get that gravel in it. Well, we want to go in with plantain first. Again, it's antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and antibacterial. It's doing all that, but what it's doing, it's drawing out any grits or dirt or anything like that. If we were to go in first with comfrey, it might heal the skin just a little bit too quickly. And what's going to happen then, it might catch an infection because we might seal in an infection. So with any, especially bigger gashes and wounds and stuff, I'm going straight in with plantain first, and then I'm following up a day or two later with comfrey when I'm sure there's no infection caught in it and I want it to heal up. I'm going in with the comfrey, but first and foremost is plantain, which is why I give it to everyone. Like I said, it's just a running joke in our family now. If anyone, it used to be my mother or my grandmother out blessing the cars with the holy water, and now it's at me running out with plantain jars and throwing them in at people. So really good one to have on hand and to make. It's super simple to make. Because it's widely available, like it's easy enough source, so we don't have to look too far. And I like when the plants are on our doorsteps, it just means that we need to use them. Did you want to ask something, Mary? Sorry. No, no, you're grand. You're still on mute. If you want to type in anything, if you need to ask a question, go ahead and I'll get it from there. So it spreads really easily because it's long taproot. So it's kind of one of those ones that's like dandelion and stuff. It spreads super easily, and a lot of people don't even realize it's there because it doesn't flower. It just sends up that like flower and head that just kind of looks. People ignore it, and they don't tend to get as angry about it as they do as dandelion. Which I'm like, dandelions are gorgeous, but anyway, not everyone thinks that way. But so they tend to just kind of ignore it and leave it be, which is great. But it doesn't have any benefit for like the bees and stuff like that, which is a pity. But has great benefit for us. So in the monthly tea, let me have it here now. The monthly tea that I sent out in the box, that was for me. I called it rewilding yourself. For me, plantain is all about rewilding. It lives on the edges. It cuts up. Like you said, it's very unassuming but very powerful, and that can be it's kind of like a gateway herb nearly to get people back into nature, get them rewilding. It grows everywhere. It's like a dandelion is like full of resilience, where plantain is more just about kind of grabbing you, bringing you back to the edges of rewilding yourself. And so it's a lovely one, not a strong tasting one, which is a great one for when you're starting off using herbs, or I don't know if anyone's tasted the tincture of it. Not super strong, which is nice because sometimes herbs can be like, taste wise can be really strong. So it's a really good one for that, for being a neutral kind of flavor, if you want to say that, even though they all have some flavor. And for digestion, we might use it for I would use it when people are coming to me with upset stomachs or inflammation, so IBS, any sort of cramps, bowel issues, yeah, like a bowel infection. What it's doing is it's going in, because it's mucilagen as well, it's going in and it's soothing the digestive tract, and it's drawing out. Like I said, for want of a better word, it's a detoxer, and it pulls out heavy metals out of our system. So if someone has an issue with heavy metals, which is can that's one of those ones that I'm always a bit wary about. I definitely think people should talk to someone like a herbalist or someone about before they go on to heavy detoxing or heavy pulling out of metals, have a conversation first, because there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. But plantain is a good way to do it, because it's a gentle one, but it will pull out it'll detox the liver, detox the stomach. But it's going in as well with the stomach. It's great at when we have any stomach issues, at the ridges in between our digestive, the lining on our stomach, it folds over on itself and stuff can get caught in it. And plantain is great at pulling that out and basically detoxing that out. So it's a really good mover. It's a good one for if anyone's suffering from, a lot of people with digestive issues would swing from constipation to diarrhea, couldn't think of the word there, and it's that sort of, they're fluctuating between one and two. Plantain, drink it in a tea. Is probably the best way for stuff like that. Any stomach issues, I'm saying probably if you can, drink it in a tea. If not, take the tincture. That's no problem. But a tea is a bit nicer for the stomach issues, a bit easier on the stomach. Like I said, it's anti-spasmodic, so it's helpful for smoothing down spasms and stuff, but I probably wouldn't use it a lot for that, to be honest. I'm using it for digestion of more, like I said, IBS issues, more detoxing, that sort of along those lines, and more for that fluctuating between diarrhea and rather than spasms. I think if someone comes through stomach spasms, I'm going in with peppermint, and I'm probably going in with cramp bark, depending on, and then it depends on everything kind of with herbs. It's funny, it depends on, we can use a load of herbs, but it will depend on the issue. If the stomach cramps are caused by PMS, I'm going in with cramp bark. If they're caused by digestive issues like Crohn's or something, I'm going in with peppermint. But a plantain will work for both either. It blends really well with peppermint, chamomile, and calendula for any stomach issues. So if you had a blend of those, it can be really helpful, at moving that along. Your respiratory system, so it helps pull out phlegm. So when we have that hacking cough, and especially now this time of year, I'm sure people will be all around with it. Actually, and I haven't so far, touch wood, had anyone come to me yet with coughs, but I'm sure it's on the way. But this is that sort of, when it's stuck, you get that like nearly like there's a fur ball, for want of a better word, in your throat. Plantain is great. And again, as a tea, if you can, but a tincture is going to be handy just for carrying around, but a tea is going to be really great there because it draws out. So it'll go in and it will break down the phlegm and it will pull it out. Yeah, and you will cough up phlegm, but that's what we want. We want it up and out. It's great at reducing kind of the congestion of your bronchial tube. So that's what it's doing. It's going down and it's breaking it up and it's pulling it out. You're either, you're going to like be, coughing a lot. That's what we want. We want it up and out and the phlegm coming out. Like I said before, it's helpful with the respiratory system. I find it really useful for sinuses and hay fever and stuff. Like I said, I give it topically and internally if that's the case, if it's hay fever, and internally for asthma as well. It'd be one that I would put in a blend for asthma. So really helpful plant. Like when we think about it, it's such a common weed, like, you know what I mean? And it's there and it's unassuming and it does all this stuff. It's like, and it's free. I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah, and it helps protect the mucous membranes, and that's what I'm saying, from irritation. So that's what it's doing. It's going in, it's soothing and it's pulling out. So it's soothing down the edges of your bronchial tubes, but it's also loosening all the phlegm so it can come out. So it's doing like two things, which is great, which is what we want. And it doesn't taste very strong. So that's a nice thing, especially if it comes to kids and stuff, trying to get them to take coughing. So it could be a case of you have a cough bottle. If you have a kid, you could add some of the tincture into the cough bottle, or you could add some of the tea into the cough bottle and, try play around with it. It's all about, when it comes to kids, hiding it really, isn't it, in the blend. I find, but kids, especially this time of year, and if they get colds or flus, if you have an elderberry syrup made, it's a great one for hiding stuff in. So you could put the plantain tincture into that, into a couple of drops of that, into a little, 3-5 ml of the elderberry syrup and get them to knock it back, and they'll take that no problem because it's nice and sweet. You could also add it into glycerite. I have some just look. That's the common glycerite you get from the chemist. My sister gave me this. And you can buy this in chemists. And you could soak some of the plantain if you got a jam jar. If you suffer from colds and or you have kids or your family or whatever, and this is a reoccurring thing this time of year, now is the time to go out, find some plantain, either dry or fresh, jam jar, put in like, maybe 60%, 60 to 70% glycerite in the jar. So if your jar is 100 ml, you're putting in 70 ml. If it's, excuse me, 200, you're putting in what, 140, whatever, eyeball it. And so about 60 to 70% full of glycerite, and then the rest water. And it just means that it's mixing it down, and leave that for about, I'd say, 4 weeks. You could use it a little sooner, but I would definitely try leave it as long as 4 weeks, which is why I'm saying trying to make it now for coming into our probably real winter won't hit till January or February. And then you can just take a teaspoon of that when you get that cough and cold. And you can do that with any herb. That's how we make glycerite. So you could do that. That's a really rough kitchen way of making a glycerite, but you get the gist of it. So if it's something that your family suffers from, worth having on hand. You could also do plantain and like thyme, would be a really good one for chest issues. The thyme is antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral. So you're getting all that, and then you have the drawing agent of the plantain. So really good combination. You could make them both together in the glycerite, half and a half, or you could do them separately. You're putting in about a third of the jar, whatever size jar you have, of dried plantain if it's dried, and about half full if it's fresh. And just make sure you cut it up. Just because you want the glycerite to get in and around everything. Like I said, they're obviously really rough measurements. And anyone who knows me will know that's not how I work anyhow. Just throw it in my grandmother was the very same. Throw it in the jar and see what happens. Don't get too bogged down about, when we're making ourselves be our own home herbalist, which is the aim of the game, to have everyone to be able to do at-home herbal remedies for themselves. Don't get tied up in kind of portion sizes and all that kind of thing. Just get it in. As my grandmother used to say, just stop flapping about and get it into you, obviously my childhood was great fun growing up at that house. Yeah, I was only laughing. I was just telling a story the other day actually about my grandmother, and I thought everyone I didn't realize you could go to the doctor when you were young and sick. I thought everyone's grandmother just had a press full of horrible tasting like stuff that you just took. I just thought that was the norm. And it wasn't. I was lied to. You could go to the doctor and probably get a nice sweet or something. I went down to my grandmother's, got a jar, got handed something, a spoon of something that always tasted horrific, but it always worked. But there you go. I was lied to for years. And it was always that same thing. Just get it into you, stop flapping about, get it into you, and you'd just be told to go over. Yeah, so that was my childhood. I didn't see a doctor until I think I was about 9, and I actually ripped the roof of my mouth with a stick thing, and I had to go to hospital, and that was the first time. And I was kind of like, I remember asking my mom, who are these people, what are they? And she's like, they're doctors. I was like, what is this, and yeah, so it was quite funny. But yeah, so plantain anyway, rinse in your eyes with it as well, so great for any inflammation of your eye. Again, if you have a sty in your eye or anything, it's going to pull that out. Not pull your eye out. You won't be walking around with one eye. But it's pulling out the infection. It's soothing the infection. So you could use it as, again, dry or fresh as a poultice. And we can go back to our old 15th century slate for help with that. I've had sore eyes before. Where I've made in a cloth chamomile, a bit of plantain, and some calendula in it, and just made it really boiling water, put it in a cloth, like wrapped in a cloth, as like a tea bag, like a Dunkin' tea bag, and then just strained it off and let it sit in the eye. But that was more of an inflammation that I wanted, but I wanted the plantain for the mucilagin properties rather than the drawn properties. So I put more chamomile and calendula in it, but it did work. I actually went to the pool Wednesday morning swimming, and I water in my ear, which normally just goes straight, after couple of minutes after you get out, but it just persisted all day. And no matter how long I left it, I was lying on the side. I was like, everything just wouldn't. And so when I came home, then I put a couple of drops of plantain oil into my ear, let it sit for a few minutes, and then turned on the side, and it was just out within a couple of minutes. So another use of it if you do go swimming, or you need to draw it out. The urinary system, it's antimicrobial, so really good for UTIs. What is really, really good for UTIs, which isn't plantain, but we'll talk about it anyhow, is corn silk. So do you know you get a cob of corn and you peel back the leaves and you have all the stringy bits? That is corn
Mhm.
silk, and that is amazing for UTIs. So if you know of anyone who grows corn, or does grow here in Ireland, the local farmers market down here in Carlow has it, and like on and off when it's in season, and I'll go down and they give me a bunch of it for nothing because people don't want it. They're peeling off that and leaving it, and I'm going through all their scraps and pulling out that corn silk, and I just leave it to dry. It will go black. It changes color, goes black, but it's still perfectly good to use. I'll save it. Anyone who has a UTI, then I'll give it to them as a tea, and it's really super helpful. But obviously, corn silk isn't available all year round. You don't grow it, you might have it. So this is where we can use plantain, which is on our doorstep, which is available all year round. And that's what I love about plantain as well. Like it's available now as it is in like July. We can find it all year round. So it's good to know that it's there, that, we don't have to wait to find some corn silk because, where are you going to find that of a Friday evening where you're, at 8 o'clock of a Friday evening when you have a UTI and no doctors are opened or whatever, you can't get to a chemist. We can go out and pick some plantain and it will do just as good job. But the corn silk is like spot on for UTIs. Um, so it has so when we take it internally, it has the ability to treat ulcers and help repair the digestive system, as I said. Blends really well with marshmallow for this. And common mallow. Here in Ireland, we have common mallow, a plant that grows really well and is used the same as we would use marshmallow. Horsetail, calendula, and a really good one to add to the seaweed for digestion if you can stomach the taste of seaweed. Some people are like absolutely not going there. Like I said, it pulls out heavy metals. It's a drawing agent. I think I mentioned that. Detoxing the liver. Oh yeah, it draws out like pus, infections, splinters, acne, boils. So it's one that my husband would use quite a bit. He works with wood. He works outdoors. He gets a lot of splinters. And so what we do, well, when we say what I do is make him a jar and I powder down the dried plantain, like I make it into a powder. And the reason I do that is because I know he's not going to take the time to use it any other way. He keeps it in a jar in work, just an old jam jar. He is supposed to go and when he gets a splinter, wash his hands and then find a piece and put it on. And what he does, and I know he does, even though he just goes, licks his finger, sticks it in the jar, and then just goes about his business. But look, it's fine and it works. And what it does within a minute or so, or depending on how far the splinter has gone down, it draws it out enough that he can actually get it and pull it out. So really good. If it's further down, he'll put a plaster over it. He'll like dip his finger in it, put a plaster over it, and just come back whenever, when he thinks of it again, when he goes off and gets busy. He has two jars. He has one that has yarrow and plantain in it, and one that just has plantain. And the reason I gave him the yarrow and plantain one is in case he makes a gash in his finger and cuts it like opened. The arrow is going to stop the bleeding and the plantain is going to draw out any dirt or plus it won't draw out the blood, but it will draw out, the any dirt or stuff. But the main one he uses is the plantain. I've tried to give him the balm and stuff like that, but because of his work situation, it just gets messy and we've just found it's easier that he just has a jar up on the shelf in the cabinet where in the press where he's working, so it just works for him. So it's, if you do know someone who maybe works a woodworker, carpenter or something, maybe throw a jar of the powdered stuff into their, I was going to say their suitcase, their toolbox. God, I couldn't think of it. You can throw it into their suitcase as well if you want. But yeah, so it's really good for that. Like I said, it just draws out. it contains a small amount of when we're and so this is the reason why I go in with plantain first and then comfrey afterwards when we're talking about healing wounds like big gashes or wounds. It's because contains a small amount of a chemical called an aldolate, which helps regenerate skin tissue and regrow it. But comfrey contains like a lot more like of that. Like I was going to say, well, I'll say it a shitload more of that one. So it heals it a lot quicker, the comfrey. So that's why the plantain is good to be your baseline and then go in with the comfrey afterwards. Because we just don't want to, especially if it's a big gash or a wound, we don't want to seal in an infection, because it's just going to cause trouble further on down the line. Really good plantain for in an oil for teething children. Again, it's going to nearly draw out the tooth, so it's going to help break that because that's the pain of it when it's pushing through. So if you have a bit of it infused in the oil, like a nice olive oil, you could use there as well. It's going to be really helpful. It is a pain-killing herb, not one of our stronger ones, but it definitely has pain-killing abilities. Plantain does. So it's going to be helpful there. You could go in with some chamomile, and I would mix chamomile and plantain. It's going to be really good there for teething. But if you just have plantain, that's fine. You also don't have to make it into an oil. You could make a really strong tea of it and just dab that on their gums. Get creative about it. Just because an oil is the best way to use it for that doesn't mean that, I mean, at 4 o'clock in the morning and the kid is crying, you're not going to go make an oil or whatever, but you can possibly make a cup of tea and do that. So it's just to have it there. Yeah, it just helps take that pain away with it. Let me see now. I was talked about that. Um, mix it. Oh yeah, for detoxing. If we want to talk about detoxing and detoxing the liver and stuff, my main one for that is dandelion, but plantain comes in second there because of its drawing agent. And I would also be mixing it in with some red clover, and that again could be in a tea form. It could be a tincture. However you have access to it, would be really good. There is no known contradictions to it, which is great. So safe to use pretty much all the way around and with everyone. Obviously, we don't want to be using a ton of it because of its drawing agents, especially if we're using it in and around the gums for ourselves with fillings and stuff like that. But we'd have to be using it consistently for a long, a good few weeks for it to draw out the filling. But it has been known to do that. So we'd have to be a little bit careful with that. You wouldn't want to be drinking it a cup of it every day, like a couple of cups of it. What I tend to use it for as well, what I like to use it for is on my skin at nighttime. I don't wear makeup simply because I was just too lazy to ever learn how to learn to put on makeup. But I do still get like, grit and dirt and stuff like that. But I've found even asking people who are advising people who women who do wear makeup and men because men wear makeup now that and they take it off and they have that gritty feeling, a little bit of plantain oil while they're going to bed can be really helpful. It draws out all those like your blackheads, your any sort of dirt and grit that can be left in. Then I'll go in with I'll let that dry in, nearly cleanse it off, and then I go in with a little dry brush. I have this beautiful one here that I was gifted by a friend of mine from Wild Soul Beauty. She's amazing, Rachel, and she has made these and or got them made for her. And this one I think is goat's hair, she said, but it's lovely and super, super soft. And after the plantain has drawn out everything, I'm just going in and I'm brushing it up my lymph, moving the lymph up and out. So it's just going to get rid of, again, it's detoxing because the plantain is detoxing the skin. And this dry brush is just so beautiful because it's so soft, because we don't need it to be like rough and hard. We just need it very gentle, and this is just a lovely way to move your lymph. So either if you don't have a dry brush, get one, and I can recommend Rachel's and her other products are amazing. But yeah, so it's another way to use plantain, and I use that as an oil that way. Unless it's really gritty and dirty, you could use the balm because it's thicker and will stay on longer. Let me take a mouthful of water. I've been on the go. Any questions from the ladies so far? No, you're full of all the go. We won't keep you much longer anyhow. Yeah, so listen, like I said, it's a really is a general like one that we should all know about. that, and it's good. And in the book, I have a recipe for a plantain syrup as well. So you could make it into a syrup for the coffin, like a, excuse me, like I was nearly saying with the glycerite, it's the same idea. You could make it into that. Like I said, for me, the essence that's in the box and stuff, I use it as a rewilding, just a way to get back into nature, to kind of pull us back in. And now is the time for doing that, for getting back and getting in touch with nature. And it's dark out, and I love this time of year. Like, I love getting up cozy and stuff like that. I love springtime as well, but this time is really special, I think, for just kind of regrounding and rewilding ourselves, and that's where plantain can be really helpful for. But my main thing with plantain is that people learn how to identify it in their own garden, because it is so abundant, like, and because it's so valuable of a herb. I've got a question. Will burdock be in a box next year, though? Maybe. I haven't planned on it. It's going to cycle back through, and I have a couple of boxes in my mind as one-off boxes, so I'll definitely put burdock on the list for you, Sarah. That's no problem. We can do that. Um yeah, I have to, we'll get through this year first, because this is like, I've now completed the full 12 months, which is has been a feat and a half, but amazing, and loads of learning going along inside it. So I think it will expand next year, but we'll get over January first, I think, and get that out of the way. But the one thing I did want to mention about plantain, in my research of it, which I love. I love the history of learning the history of plants, and I think it's important. And I think, these things didn't just pop up out of nowhere. Well, they do out of the ground, but the history of them, I love when there's like a solid kind of base of history behind them. So King Henry VIII, who obviously we all know with his many wives, he was a massive plant person, and he was actually one of the pushers behind getting the herbal books translated from different languages and sent around England to different places and stuff. He was a, well, I suppose we would class as a kitchen herbalist now. He loved to tinker. He had his own apothecary. He loved to make up blends and stuff like that. And he'd send people off out to pick plants, and he'd send off to foreign countries for all these different weird and wonderful ingredients. Like, he did use lead at one stage and stuff and things like that, but like, they all did a bit crazy. But he has in the History Museum in England, in the British Museum, I can't remember the name of the museum, but they have manuscripts from him from the time of King Henry VIII, where he is credited with making up about, I think they have about, like, one manuscript has about 200 recipes in it, and actually King Henry has, his name is under like 50 or 60 of them, that they were his invention of um you know of herbal remedies. But one that he has that I love, because that he's come up with, like, he made recipes, yeah, for balms and lotions and the whole thing. And I guess it's because he had the sore leg, or the ulcer on his leg, and he was always sick. But because of his many wives, he obviously had an amazing sex life, or, well, but we won't say amazing, but he had a sex life that was very active, and because he was trying to get his heir. So he came up with an ointment called the King's Grace ointment. And it was invented to, and this is how it was explained back then, to cool, dry, and comfort the member. And so it's down to his strenuous sex life and his own personal member, as he would call it. And he used plants and flowers that were cooling, healing, and softening. And the main one in his recipe for his King's Grace ointment, so he could have all his sex, was plantain. Then he had fungreek in it, marshmallow, and violet leaf. And it just makes sense, because they're all very softening. They're very, mucilaginous herbs. They're antiseptic as well. So yeah, I just thought it was really funny that that's what King Henry was using it for. His sex life was using plantain. And you can only imagine, I wouldn't say they showered very often back then or anything like that. So I would say that was quite fun. But yeah, another piece of useless history, but great history, that it's coming the whole way through, and that even if it was good enough for King Henry to put on his member, it's good enough for us, to use in our everyday life, and using it like that. So any questions on plantain? No. covered it all. I've thrown a lot of information at you there, Mary. You're probably like, well,
Oh, I have it all in the book now.
good, good. It's all in the book. Yeah, exactly. And you know, that's the great thing about those books. You can go back to them over and over again. And there's so much to learn about all these herbs. And it's just the boxes are meant to be just a sort of a little introductory, getting you enough that you can get on with it if that's all you want. But there you can go off and learn so much more. And like I encourage you to get out and find them and taste them and, you know, make your own concoctions with them and be a King Henry and come up with your own whatever you need. You know, maybe you have 8 husbands that you need to satisfy and you need to do it. So, you know, it's all about it, isn't it? Like, you know, so but yeah, so that's plantain in a nutshell, in a really quick nutshell. And if you have any questions afterwards or whatever, let me know. Next month, it's this month already, and I forgot. And I sent out the rose box. Did you get you've received it?
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean,
Yes.
how can you not love rose? I'm just going to, for the purpose of people, oh, excuse me, it's after falling there. Who'll be watching the call who don't have it. And this month's box, December, is rose, which is lovely. I was actually raging sending it out because my apothecary smelled beautiful for the last couple of weeks with all the roses in it, and then I had to get rid of them all. And I was like, there's some beautiful rose buds. These are actually from Turkey. These rose buds, all organic. There's rose to make your own tincture, which smells great afterwards, I have to say. And there's pre-made rose tincture, rose essence, which I love as well. Rose oil, I spoiled you all this month. And a rose and lavender syrup. Did you try the syrup?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's lovely in sparkling water. Or just a bit in teas. And then there's also the herbal tea from the garden to the heart. So that's what's in this month's box. And you can, anyone who hasn't got it and wants to sign up for it can, up until I'd say probably at the 15th this month, and then I'm probably going to hibernate and get ready for January's box, which is nettle, as we move through the months again. And hopefully, Sarah, next year we will get around to burdock and remind me, and I will definitely do that. But yeah, so if there's no questions, we'll finish up there. I'll let you just go back to, I'm going to go make some cacao and settle down for the night. And yeah. Oh, and that's another, I don't know if anyone drinks cacao or your herbal teas. You can add your essences into them. It's a nice way to start using them. Because some people are like, what do I do with the essence? You know, they're not really into that side of things. As I've said before on calls, or you can use them to cleanse. I use them sometimes. I'll drop a few on my hand and use it and just kind of, you know, just to clear off the energy. You can drop them on a few drops on the floor. You can use them in your car, dropping them a few drops on the car, you know, so you can have fun with them. They're just kind of whatever you want to make of them, you can do. But I like to, especially that rose one, I really like to add that into my teas or my cacaos. And yeah, I just think it's a lovely way of using them. So that's all I have for you. Hope you got something out of it, and anyone who's watching the replay, hope you get something out of it as well. And I'm not going to do a call this month, next month, whatever, because it's December and everyone's just so busy. So what I'm going to do for the rose box, I'll do it early January, and then we'll do one late January for the nettles. Just if anyone's wondering, just too much pressure for me, to be honest. I'm winding down, and yeah. So that's it. So I hope you all have a lovely holiday season. And as always, any questions or anything, just shoot me a line over the email and I will answer them as I can. So have a lovely evening, and I'll pop this recording up tomorrow on YouTube, and I'll send out an email anyhow to say it's up there. And yeah, have a lovely evening. And thanks so much, ladies, for coming on. It's so nice not to at least have one or two people here and not to be talking to myself, because that's the usual talking to myself. So it's nice not to do that for once.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care
Thank you.
then. Bye then. Thank you. Bye
Thank
then.
you.